It was a routine evening at the station, and Officer Davis thought it would be another uneventful shift. But everything changed when a luxury car pulled up to the checkpoint. Inside was a well-dressed woman with an air of confidence, but Davis, determined to assert his authority, decided to search the car. What began as a standard check quickly escalated, leaving the woman embarrassed and furious. Little did Davis know, the woman wasn't just anyone. She was the wife of Police Commissioner James Whitmore. When word reached the commissioner, he stormed to the scene, his face a mix of disbelief and restrained anger. As he approached, the officers suddenly realized who they had been dealing with. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. What happened next would change the dynamics of the entire department, and Davis was about to face the consequences of his actions. As the commissioner stepped out of his car, the air grew tense. Officers who had been standing confidently a moment ago now avoided eye contact. Officer Davis, still unaware of the woman's identity, tried to explain himself, but his words faltered as Commissioner Whitmore's sharp gaze fell on him. "Do you realize who you've just humiliated?" the commissioner asked, his voice calm but laced with authority. Davis glanced nervously at the woman, now standing silently beside the commissioner, her expression unreadable. Whispers rippled through the other officers, and Davis's confidence began to crumble. The woman's name was Emily Whitmore, and she was no stranger to being treated with respect, but tonight had been different. Her husband turned to her and asked softly, "What exactly happened?" Emily hesitated, glancing at Davis, whose face had turned pale. The truth was about to unravel, but the consequences still hung in the air, uncertain and foreboding. Emily took a deep breath, her voice steady but with an edge of frustration. "He stopped me for no reason, asked invasive questions, and searched my car like I was a criminal. When I asked why, he said it was routine." Her words were measured, but the weight of them made the silence around her deafening. Commissioner Whitmore's expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered with something unreadable. He turned to Davis. "Routine?" he asked, his voice calm but piercing. Davis stammered, "Sir, I was just following protocol. I didn't know who she was." "Should it matter who she is?" Whitmore asked sharply, silencing Davis. The other officers looked on, some shifting uncomfortably. Emily crossed her arms, watching the scene unfold. "If this is how you treat me, I can't imagine how others are treated," she said. Her words lingered in the air, sparking a question none of them wanted to answer. The commissioner's gaze stayed fixed on Davis, who now stood frozen, his confidence shattered. "Tell me, Officer Davis," Whitmore said, his voice low but firm, "what exactly made you decide this car was suspicious? Was it her demeanor, her license plate, or just a whim?" Davis swallowed hard. "It was nothing personal, sir. I was just being thorough," he muttered, though his voice carried little conviction. Whitmore's eyes narrowed. "Thorough? You humiliated someone without cause and called it thorough." The weight of the commissioner's words sent a ripple through the officers watching nearby. Emily watched her husband, her frustration beginning to shift into something deeper, curiosity about how he would handle this. The silence stretched as Whitmore paced slowly, the tension building with every step. Finally, he stopped and addressed everyone present. "If this is how my wife is treated, what does it say about how the rest of the public experiences our so-called thoroughness?" The question hung heavy in the air, sparking unease among the officers. The crowd of onlookers that had started to gather only added to the growing pressure. All eyes were on Whitmore now, and Davis's face turned a deeper shade of red. What came next would not only decide Davis's fate, but also send a message to everyone watching. Before Whitmore could say another word, a voice broke through the tension. "Sir, may I speak?" It was Officer Hernandez, one of the quieter members of the team. She stepped forward, her expression conflicted. Whitmore turned to her, nodding slowly. "Commissioner, I was at the checkpoint earlier. I noticed Officer Davis seemed eager to pull over high-end vehicles tonight. He said it was part of cracking down on potential smugglers." Hernandez's voice wavered, but her honesty was clear. Davis shot her a sharp look, but she continued, "I didn't think much of it at the time, but now maybe it wasn't as random as it seemed." The commissioner's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Emily's eyes narrowed, her instincts kicking in. "So it wasn't just me," she said softly, her voice laced with disbelief. Whitmore turned back to Davis, his calm facade cracking. "Is that true? Were you targeting people based on their appearance or status?" Davis opened his mouth to protest, but before he could, another officer chimed in hesitantly. "He did mention wanting to make a high-profile catch tonight, sir." I thought he was joking. The revelation sent a wave of murmurs through the gathered officers. Emily exchanged a look with her husband, the weight of the moment shifting as more questions bubbled to the surface. What had started as one incident was beginning to unravel something much bigger. Whitmore's eyes swept over the officers, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Enough," he said, his tone commanding silence. He turned back to Davis, who now looked more like a man cornered than a confident officer. "You've not only embarrassed this department tonight, you've exposed a culture I won't tolerate. If you're targeting people based on assumptions or appearances, then you're not doing your job. You're abusing it." Davis tried one last time to defend himself. "Sir, I was just trying to make a difference. Catching a big case could have boosted our reputation." Whitmore cut him off. "Our reputation is built on trust, not ego. And tonight, you've shattered both." He paused, then looked to Hernandez and the other officers who had spoken up. "Thank you for your honesty. It takes courage to stand against your own." Just as the tension seemed to ease, Emily stepped forward. "James, there's something you should see." Reaching into her bag, she pulled out her phone and played a video she'd discreetly recorded during the stop. The footage showed Davis making condescending remarks and searching her car without consent, his tone laced with arrogance. The crowd gasped, and Whitmore's expression turned icy. Davis's face drained of color. I didn't know." He stammered, but there was no room left for excuses. Whitmore nodded at his wife, then turned to Davis. "You're suspended, effective immediately. An internal investigation will follow." As Davis was escorted away, Emily looked at her husband. "Do you think this will really change anything?" she asked quietly. Whitmore sighed, his shoulders heavy. "It's a start," he replied. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning of uncovering deeper issues within the force, a truth that neither of them could ignore. As the crowd began to disperse, Emily and James stood side by side, the weight of the evening hanging between them. "You've handled it well," Emily said, her voice steady but thoughtful. "But you're right, this is just the beginning." James nodded, his gaze distant as he watched the officers return to their duties, some still shaken by what had unfolded. "This department has to be better," James said finally. "It's not enough to remove one bad apple. We need to change the way we operate, from the ground up." Emily placed a hand on his arm. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but tonight was a step forward. At least they know someone is watching." As they walked toward their car, the tension began to ease, replaced by a quiet resolve. The commissioner had made it clear that accountability would no longer be optional, and Emily had reminded everyone that power comes with responsibility.